Tēnā koutou katoa, talofa lava, malo e lele, whakalofa lahi atu, nisa bulavanaka. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, kia ora, haere mai ki tēnei hui. Hello everyone, my name is Sylvie Thrush Marsh and I will be chairing our panel this afternoon for what is sure to be an excellent discussion about performance and culture. Let me introduce myself. I'm MyHR's Chief Evangelist. I joined the business 7 years ago where we could all fit around the one table at our local Malaysian restaurant. So it's pretty surreal to be having our 10th birthday earlier this year with 75 staff. MyHR's vision has always been to bring practical and meaningful HR support to businesses that do not have in-house HR or have a very stretched HR team. We support companies, not-for-profits, and of course, sporting teams across New Zealand and Australia with headcounts ranging from 2 employees to 750 across all industries. Our business model is unique in that we combine our HR platform with a dedicated team of HR professionals like Emma, who's here today down the front, to provide a full outsourced HR department to our customers. With a decade under our belts, like I said, we now have 75 staff in 2 countries, and we're about to launch in Canada, which is very exciting. I'm, of course, delighted to see you all here today, including some familiar faces from companies that we've had relationships with, and we really appreciate your attendance today. We know that there are lots of networking opportunities and events across Auckland, so thank you for choosing to spend some of your time here with us. Now, the purpose of today's session is to give you the chance to meet some other good humans, enjoy some kai, learn from our excellent guests, and get up close and personal with a club that is having a very excellent season. If some of us end up doing business together, that's a really good thing, but this is by no means a hard sell environment. MyHR has been the HR partner of the One New Zealand Warriors for 6 years now, and we're very proud of that relationship. As you can imagine, there's been a lot of discussion about doing an event like this, so we're very pleased to be here today and to have pulled it off, and thank you to Glenn and his team for all the work to make it happen. We're also exploring options to extend our partnership further, and we're taking expressions of interest for a business club to be launching in 2024, so please keep an eye out for more information about that in your emails after the session today. Without further ado, I turn to our wonderful panel. Welcome Cameron, Andrew and Jason. Thank you for being with us today. And we'll start with some introductions and I'll kick off with Cameron George. So Cameron hails from rural New South Wales and has worked in New Zealand since 2006, holding various integrity, leadership and governance positions across the sporting and event industries, including with the Auckland Racing Club and NZ Thoroughbred Racing. After a couple of years on the board of the Warriors, he took over as CEO in 2017 with a clear mandate to lift the performance of the club of an underperforming business, as well as managing public expectations that happen overnight.
That makes you a Kiwi, mate.
Yeah.
It might all end here.
Focusing on the culture of the club has been critical to its recovery and success over the last 8 years, and Cameron firmly believes that the strong culture of care and communication here at the Warriors has played a critical role in that recovery, particularly during the COVID pandemic. Cam, I've had the pleasure of working with you on a range of HR matters over the years, and one of your leadership values that's always stood out to me is your focus on empowering and supporting your team rather than coming in over the top of them. How do you assess when empowerment and support is the best approach, as opposed to stepping in and providing some more direct guidance?
Yes. Sorry, I wasn't listening to that last bit. I didn't know it was a question. What was the question?
I threw you by calling you a Kiwi, mate. I think that's
one of the ways that you lead your team is very much focused on empowering and supporting them rather than coming in over the top. Yeah. How do you make the judgment call about whether to continue supporting someone or to step in with some more direct instruction?
Well, at the Warriors, we're a very unique business where a lot of people that work in roles that sit structurally below the CEO are actually quite experts in their field. So if I talk about players, strength and conditioning, coaching staff, head coach, you'll find they know a lot more about the business and a lot more about their role than what normally the CEO would have covered. So for me, it's about employing the best people in the right role and allowing them to do their trade. And there's a great example sitting to the right of me. There's other examples like strength and conditioning. I'm not going to go and tell them how to train a team, even though I'm the CEO. That's completely out of my sort of knowledge path. So the best thing for me is to work with them, guide them, provide them with the best structures around them and resources, and allow the experts to do their job. So that's a bit unique apart to other structures in other businesses.
Nice, thank you. And next we have Andrew Webster. And Andrew, can I call you Webby? Fantastic. Webby came on board as head coach of the Warriors this season. After a successful playing career in Australia, he headed to the land of the free and established his coaching credentials with the Connecticut Wildcats, leading them to the grand final in 2005. Since then, he's worked with a range of clubs, leaders and players, winning back-to-back premierships with the Penrith Panthers in 2021 and 2022. Webby, with 2 games to go in the regular season, what's taking up most of your energy right now?
Probably improvement, really. We're very happy with where we're sitting on the table, but there's so much more improvement in us. It's kind of like you got to celebrate where we are now. We're very proud of it, the process and the work and how we've got to where we've gotten can't be forgotten. But there's some real improvement in what we need to do with our game, what we want. So for us to be successful in the final series, we're going to have to get back to playing some of the football that we were. And then the other stage of it, I spoke about celebrating, is we're probably not playing our best football, but we've turned into a team that's knowing how to win when we're not playing well. So it's just striving for that excellence, that how can we be better. We feel that our game is that close, like there's a couple of inches, there's a couple of moments in it that we could be a grand final winning team. So we're trying to chase that. There's no complacency. We're not thinking we're there yet. We're not thinking we're better than anyone else. We're thinking if we really want this, we're going to have to go after these little moments that we're chasing. And then at the same time, we're really proud and celebrating the fact that, you know, we're winning when we're not actually playing our best football, and that's what good football teams do. So I'd say that's where the most energy is, chasing that improvement.
And last but not least, we have Jason Ennor. Jason is the CEO and co-founder of MyHR. During his time as a senior HR executive with retail and consumer brands, Jason saw the potential for HR services to be delivered differently. And at the same time, he was pretty turned off by what can sometimes be pretty stale delivery of internal HR support. In 2013, he left what he describes as his last real job with Woolworths Australia to launch a tech HR startup with best mate Sean O'Brien, who's also here today. MyHR now has 1,300 clients across New Zealand and Australia, and it's a point of pride for us that we've never taken significant outside investment, instead choosing to bootstrap our way to success. My introduction to MyHR was at a conference where Jason was speaking, and I was really struck by his vision for what good HR support could be for small businesses. And when he answered a question from the audience by saying, well, just don't be a dick, I knew that he was my kind of people. Jason, on the topic of culture, has anything surprised you about being the leader of a business versus being an HR professional advising the leaders of businesses?
Yeah, thanks. Hey, and thanks everyone for coming. I can assure you, as the non-celebrity guest on the stage, I'm not going to do a lot of talking. I'll answer the questions really short and get on to these guys. Also want to say well done. You talk about pride. We're all proud. Mate, what a season. We are, yeah, this is fantastic. So, and what I see, what I hope we're all seeing, is the potential for what this means for next year and the year after. It feels like something's building, and man, as long-term, die-hard supporters, it's so exciting to see. So yeah, good on you.
Thank you very much.
All right. For me, Sylvie, yeah. I guess to answer your question, Sylvie, as a business owner or leader and in any kind of profile role, is how much people look at you for leadership, as opposed to being a staffer in a corporate, you know. And so I have to watch how I behave, what I do, because that sets the tone for the culture ultimately. So it's an awareness of who I am, how I act, what I do and don't tolerate within my organisation. So yeah, that was a big shift, you know, and really owning who we are, what we are, and what we want to be. Even when sometimes that might be a little bit unpopular. Your job as the leader is to hold firm, and that's what drives a high-performing culture. So yeah, thank you.
So I think we'll all agree that the depth and breadth of experience on this panel is pretty significant. So my job here today is just to keep us focused on the topic of building a high-performance culture. So let's get started. Now, culture is quite a slippery word. It can mean different things to different people. So what I wanted to start us off with is just giving us a quick-fire definition of what culture means to you in the context of thinking about high performance. And Webby, we'll start off with you. How do you think about culture?
Yeah, my culture's probably very basic, and I hope that probably excites people in the room. It's not complicated. First of all, I want to drive enjoyment. Enjoyment for me is, people have probably heard me talk about this, one is laughter. Everyone thinks enjoyment is like you're sitting in a room or you're at the pub or you're at home with your family and you're laughing. 100% agree with that. But there's just so much more. So you spoke about empowerment. I think people enjoy the fact that they come to work and they're empowered and people around them actually have faith in them and believe in them and give them an opportunity to actually take the reins of something. I think education, if people feel like they're being developed and they're learning, then they feel like you care about them and you're investing in them with one, education, your time, your energy, then they go home that day feeling once again enjoyment. And I think the biggest thing is how to bring a group of people together that they don't all have the same things in common. They have some things, and that's rugby league for us. Like we're all there, they're all playing and we're all coaching, but they're from different cultures, like externally, different families, different upbringings, different things that they want to do in their own spare time. So how do you bring those people together to have enjoyment, have fun, get along, and they're willing to actually do anything for each other? Literally, in a contact sport like rugby league, how do they have each other's backs? So for me, if we drive a culture that is around enjoyment, and the last thing is, are they feeling safe? Are they safe to be themselves? Do they get to come in? Are they going to be bagged or mocked because they're different? Or are they willing to be themselves, and do they feel safe that they can be themselves? And those things, if you feel that and you go home and you're sitting at dinner with your wife or your husband or your family that night, you're going to say, I really enjoy where I want to go. And straight away when you do that, we haven't even spoken about the things on the field, the training, the working hard. They'll naturally start working hard. They'll naturally start getting better at their craft. And then you start seeing results. And then when you win, what do? You have enjoyment. So no one, that's the aim of the game at the end of the day, is to win. But you've got to enjoy it along the way, and it means so many different things to me, enjoyment.
Cam, I'll throw to you. How do you think about culture and high performance?
Yeah, a lot of similarities to what Webby just said, and culture for me is quite a slippery word, as you say. To me, culture is people. That's all it comes down to. You have good people, you'll have people inspiring their teammates, their workmates. They won't take the piss out of the place. They'll work hard, they'll achieve high. But you have bad people and you get the complete opposite. And, we've learnt that the hard way on numerous occasions, either with players or staff. But what that does is underpin, when you've got the right people, it underpins where you need unbelievable culture, and that's in difficult times. And we've all experienced that in the different workplaces over the last few years. And the one thing that, I can be proud of at the One New Zealand Warriors is the culture that Ortex, our owners, instilled in our business that we didn't really know about, that now has inspired us to be really great in tough periods. And that normally is when we're not winning games and everyone on the outside's coming at us. But I truly believe it comes back to one thing, and that's the people. And you have the wrong people, you'll have the wrong workplace. And that leads to bad culture and performance.
Jason, over to you.
Yeah, all of that, right? That was, solid answers. For me, then, what that sort of adds up to in a reality is for me, culture is about how a place feels. It's all the stuff that happens off the ball, outside the job description, not written in policy. You can't write it down. You can't say, this is our culture, follow these 5 steps and you've got it. It's the way a place feels when you walk into it. I had this regional manager at Woolworths. He'd walk into a store and he'd go, this place has the smell of death, and he just kind of had this sense that things weren't working, and it was because of the people, and that feeds through to the culture. And you can tell straight away. It's this gut feel that you get from a place. And whether people greet you, whether they smile, they shake your hand, whether they clean up the kitchen, whatever it is that they do, this pride in your workplace, this pride in your team, especially in tough times. Culture holds when times are good and times are bad. So it's the unspoken, unwritten things that define it, and you can't ignore that because it's so critical to any organisation.
Fantastic. Thank you all. We'll jump into some individual questions, and towards the end we'll absolutely have time for a Q&A from the audience with some balls to give away. So if you need to ramp up to start thinking about what you might ask our panel, this is your heads up. So Webby, with the greatest of respect, after finishing second to last in 2022, I don't know that anyone would have picked the Warriors to be sitting third on the table with 2 games to go in the regular season. To ask the question that I think is on everyone's mind, how has this happened? What is going on behind closed doors?
It's hard for me to compare last year to this year because I wasn't here, and I say that respectfully because for all we know, and Cameron could answer it, there's probably a million things going really well that no one was seeing that was probably leading towards this direction. Mm-hmm. I've been here before, and I knew the potential this place had. So I can really only talk about what's happened since I've come in the doors. Firstly, front office has been extremely ambitious. So I felt last time I was here, the players and the club themselves and the front office were happy just to compete and just happy to be in the NRL. As I feel like the ambition now is, no, we're here to win it, and once we win it, we're here to be consistent and be a force for a long time. So that excited me. I was like, I want to be a part of that, and I think the players feel the ambitions. It's probably going to talk a little bit about culture. Another piece about it is if you get good people that want to work hard, like Cameron said, we've got amazing people. So we've got players that are like the most beautiful temperament, great people. They're not all saints. They've probably made mistakes in their lives, but where they currently are at, they're really mature. They want to work hard, and that's what they've done. We've culturally spoken about, particularly the Māori culture here, about we've got a theme around our waka. We're all in the waka, and we've got to be rowing in the same direction. And if one person's going the opposite way, okay, you're in trouble. So we've made a really clear thing. You either row in the same direction, or unfortunately, you're going to have to leave. And we've noticed a big impact that if that person's not buying in, then they're gone and they've left. And as soon as that person has left, and they're not terrible people, but they're just not rowing in the same direction. When that person's gone, we've noticed a real change in the way we train. We've noticed a real impact on the way we play, and the real enjoyment and culture around the place is unbelievable. So I think everyone wants answers. I'm going to go away in the pre-season and write all these things down because I feel like, on the off-season I should say, because I feel like there's been so many learnings, that all we've brought it back to is we have to enjoy it, like I've said. We have to work really hard, and we have to buy in and go in the same direction. Because in the NRL, and probably in a lot of your jobs, there's talented people in the building. They've got there because they're talented. Like they've progressed their way in the NRL up through the grades, and they've got there, and the Warriors have signed them, or another club has signed them. So it's one thing to have talent, but if you want to be an elite player and you want to play in a championship team or a really good team, or top 4 team, you're going to have to work together, okay? And you can't be lazy. You can't take shortcuts. You've got to do what it is. And every single player right now is going in the same direction, and they're working as hard as they can. So I think that's the reason for the success.
And Jason, you and I know that in HR there's a bit of a saying that culture will eat strategy for breakfast. Thinking about kind of Andrew's comments and reflecting on your time as an HR leader in corporates and then building MyHR over the last 10 years, have you found that to be true?
Yeah, totally. It's a classic old saying, but it's true. In large corporates or any bigger organisations, it's the death by 1,000 cuts. If your culture's not good, if people aren't buying into what's going on, it's all those little behaviours that will ultimately unravel it. In a startup, when 10 years ago, we had nothing but culture. Our strategy was survive. We didn't have any money. We were bootstrapped. We weren't a sort of VC-backed American tech company. We had a plan. We kind of knew roughly what we needed to do. We relied on some good early adopters like Cameron here, who gave us direct feedback and told us what was good and what wasn't. But it was all about culture. The strategy was just survive, don't go under, and that focus on who we were, what we stood for, why we were different to every other provider in the market, how we win our respective competition. We're up against some very big, cashed-up competitors. Culture is the key to that, and I think we've done all right.
And Cameron, speaking to that piece around kind of culture change over time, you've been at the helm of the Warriors for 6 years now. How does the role of a leader differ in developing and supporting a healthy culture when you do have that luxury of time, as opposed to when you're in a role where you need to have a short-term impact like a consultant or a coach?
Firstly, you're still charging me the same rate as you did 10 years ago, so give me a special rate now. That was one of your first.
That is a special rate, mate. Everyone else has gone up.
I've actually been so lucky as a person in the CEO's role, because I've been hit with a footy team that was going backwards when I first stepped in. I've had multiple coaches and challenges, and we got hit in the face with a pandemic, relocated, disconnected, had people play for us that shouldn't have been there, had people work for us that shouldn't have been there, and then we finally come home after a period of time and had the best people come and work for us, and it's a reflection of where the club's at now. So I've been absolutely blessed to have all those experiences. I saw, the leadership that I had to demonstrate during certain times. I was most proud of the leadership that just came naturally in the most difficult time, and that's when, we're at rock bottom in the last 2 years. So that to me was just a real blessing to have all those experiences, because you can take them forward with you. You can help the younger kids coming through and understand what leadership's all about and what being a great team member's all about, because that's what it came down to. And whilst ever you have good people, you'll be a good leader. That I cannot continue to reinforce that enough. It's all about the people in and around you. And for me, I've been blessed with all those challenges, but great people that now sit around me has helped us get over it. And
Jason, Webby touched on earlier the difficulty of working with people who are talented but maybe not pulling in the same direction as everyone else. How important is it to address people who might be functionally performing and kind of delivering as required, but don't have the attitude or the values that you're looking for?
Good question. It's critical, and it's hard, right? Like you can have marquee players that have really bad behaviour and bad alignment to the culture. You can have fantastic performers, salespeople smashing their targets, but as humans, they're just not that great. And what they do to your organisation has a far more significant commercial effect, but in a way that's kind of hidden. So to answer your question, it's critically important to deal with what I'd call the culture killers. And in the ideal world, the sort of utopian outcome is it actually self-selects. A strong culture doesn't allow people to behave like that because everyone else around them doesn't let that kind of behaviour proliferate. Sometimes, though, there's such strong personalities that it does. So it's your role as a leader to directly address it. And the only way is to call it out, to front it and go, look, you're great here, but you're grossly undermining everything you're doing over here. And we encourage those conversations with our clients in all contexts. It's not disciplinary, there's no employment law kind of concerns, it's a straight up manager to employee conversation. And if they're genuinely high performers, they should get that, because the real elite is a whole person. You can be really good at something, but you'll hit a ceiling if you haven't worked out all that other stuff around who you are as a person. I think this idea around enjoyment, around celebrating, being able to reflect. So often people with that level of performance and ego, they don't reflect on when things go wrong. They just put that aside and go, I don't need to worry about that. I just focus on what a legend I am. And that never works. So directly address it. It's the only way.
And Cam, you've mentioned a couple of times now the importance of having good people in place so you can be a good leader. When you're looking for good people, what is it that you're looking for?
Honesty. I think the best people that I see around anywhere are the people that know at work what they're not good at and being honest about it rather than bullshit people. You know, I went and sat down with Dave Rennie about 18 months ago in Australia and just had an amazing, you know, a couple of hours with him to learn so much. And we talked about all this culture and everything in the Wallabies and the All Blacks and rugby in general and in life. And the thing I took away from him was when you had people being honest about their capabilities. So what I mean by that and how that helps us in the workplace is Webby knows what he's not good at, and I know what I'm good at. And if I can help him be good at what he's not good at and help him grow in his role and vice versa, that's a real honest organisation, and that's a real big attribute that a lot of staff, you know, are challenged by. And if you have a one-on-one with a staff member, which quite often we do, and we say, well, what aren't you good at? It's quite confronting for them. And that honest feedback that you give them and they give you is really important to then progressing into a really good work unit and really good outcomes. And a lot of people feel like, you know, honest feedback's just you giving them feedback, but the real honest feedback's when they give you feedback that they're struggling in certain areas and so on. So honesty in that person and understanding how good and bad they are at different things is really important.
Which is hard to expect if they don't feel safe. If they don't feel safe giving that feedback, you're not going to have that two-way communication. And Webby, the NRL is a really high scrutiny environment. So how do you focus the players on performance and belief and then help maintain their confidence through the season after finishing in the bottom 8 for the last 4 years?
The belief thing was my probably number one focus. I felt like they were beaten in the media. I heard too many conversations that they weren't good enough, and I felt like they started believing they weren't good enough, and that was just from an outsider looking in. I just heard too much noise around they weren't good enough. And then talking about good people, Cameron went and recruited good players before I came along. I was still working in Penrith, and they recruited and he takes a lot of credit for that, don't you worry. Yeah. I hear about it every day. But as soon as you just started hearing everyone saying we're going to finish last this year, and that it didn't. I'm not one of those people who wants to prove people wrong. I just want everyone in the building create a place that we have so much success and so much fun that I don't care what people outside think. That's just how I've always been. So I'm not about it. I'm not about proving people wrong. But then I started saying to myself, well, I feel like these guys are starting to listen to it too much. Okay, so we just did a lot of stuff on the mental side of the game, building them up, showing them confidence. Now, one of those things is on the grass, you got to do 1,000 reps of a particular thing, okay? And if they actually see, wow, this is working, straight away their belief and confidence starts going through the roof. So we did that with every facet of the game. We broke it right down from the smallest little bits of detail to the bits where you see on the weekend where they're doing 13v13. We did so many different scenarios that if they're in that scenario on the weekend, they feel comfortable. But what we also did, we also then brought it back and said, what's the most important things about winning? Okay, so like if you picked, we went away as coaches and we said there's 4 things, non-negotiable, can't be an opinion, they've got to be fact. So they've got to be driven by stats, numbers. So everyone would say straight away, if you hang on to the ball, you win the game. So let's say completions or possessions, one of them. So what are all the little things we've got to do at training each day to be the best in the NRL at possession? Okay, and then everyone says, well, defence is the thing. Okay, well, it's got to be smaller than that. What part about defence is the most important thing? And then they say, less tackling. All right, we're going to be the best at tackling. So we do a lot of reps on tackling. So if you bring it back to 4 basic things of your business or your craft, your game, and you just make sure that 80% of the time, in my opinion, you are practicing those. And the things outside of that, I call that the extra detail. Okay, so the reason why I'm telling you that story is we did that so often and got so good at it that by the end of the preseason, I could see their belief and confidence going up. Okay, and I felt like we started the season and I thought after 5, 6, 7, 8 rounds, they looked and turned around to each other and thought, you know, we can do this. We're actually competing here. We're more than good enough to be in the NRL. And then my language to them is the other next important bit. I always told them that I believed in them. I wanted them to leave each day and make sure they knew that I thought they'd done really well that day. And lastly, then is expectation. So how do you keep them now, whether they've had success, on their feet? and that is honest feedback. They need to know, like I'm saying, we're striving for the last piece at the moment, and we're not good enough where we need to be. We're great how we got here, but you've got to keep them on the ground, because you know what? The whole country right now is telling these guys how good they are, you know, and they are bloody good. I'm proud of them. I know we're all proud of them, but if we really want to be where we want to be, we're to chase something more. So going home to your family, your friends, and reading the newspapers, boys, that is not going to get you the next step. You got to be honest with yourself, and we've got to help you understand that we know what we're good at, but we've got to know what we've got to fix. So, yeah, that's my little spiel.
Can I just add something to that? It's quite interesting. At the start of the season, Webby and I were sitting in the office having a chat about innovation, doing things differently and so on. And historically, and right across the NRL, each club has 36 players on their top roster. And of that, every club has a leadership group within the playing ranks. So 5 or 6 of the leaders, no different to GMs or executives in your business. And one of the things we discussed when we're trying to rebuild belief and giving everyone a voice and some opportunity to lead at different times was, you know, we sat there and we thought about, you know, at the 67th minute or the 27th minute, any one of the 13 players on the field will have to lead at some stage in some aspect of the game. Yet when they came off the field, our leadership group took away that voice and took away that leadership. And we had a lot of young kids coming up through the system that have only ever worked under that environment. So Webby, to his credit, said, well, let's scrap the leadership group and let's give everyone a voice to grow within the team. And through those mechanisms and different training regimes and different ideas that he had, all of a sudden that player that sits 35th on our roster was talking as loud as our captain of our club, and he hasn't even played NRL at that stage. So we were finding we were growing leaders just organically by taking away the leadership group and the leaders within the group. We always knew they were going to lead when times were tough or we needed certain voices, but it just saw a real shift in the last few years to this year around belief in what these players could do. And the minute they found a voice, they started believing in their, you know, in their opportunity within the club as well.
Nice. Thank you for sharing. And pivoting now to start thinking about some of the changes we have experienced as businesses and as employees over the last few years, and Cam, you alluded to this earlier. Jason, the rise of hybrid working, or in some cases total remote working, is having a massive impact on management practices and on company and team culture. What advice do you have for businesses who are navigating that transition at the moment?
Yeah, sure. Before I do, I just want to acknowledge that response from you two, mate. That was fantastic. There's the secret there, right? How about that for turning the club around? That was solid. I hope we recorded that because, yeah, fantastic. And we believed, honestly, we didn't believe the media. We stopped reading the papers. We all believed you could do it. Hybrid work's a massive topic. Obviously different, you know, we talk about the club in the COVID times, the Tamworth year, you know, and everything that went around there. Everyone's been affected by what the pandemic meant for working. Hybrid work is the single biggest topic for our New Zealand, Australian and Canadian operation now. Everyone, all our clients are all asking about how they do it, how they manage it. Certain jobs you just can't, but those where you can, there's no sort of silver bullet answer. All I will say to it is whether it's hybrid, fully remote or fully at work, be clear on what your plan is. Don't let it just drift in the wind and define itself, because inequity will come up and people will feel a bit badly treated by wherever they've landed. And then you'll get just everyone taking Monday and Friday off and not coming into the office because they have that freedom. So be deliberate about what your strategy is and make sure that that strategy aligns to whatever it is you're trying to achieve as an organisation. So if you do say, we are 100% in the office, you're prepared that might be unpopular with some people, but you don't mind because you know that those that stick it out and stay with you are the ones that will help you get there. And if you want to go 100% remote, that should feed whatever it is that you're doing. So be very deliberate about your decision on whether you are hybrid, remote, or in office, and then apply that and align that to your strategy, and that's the best way to do it. And if you are remote, have systems in place to manage remote workers around, you know, regular check-ins, regular catch-ups, that kind of stuff.
And Cam, you've alluded to the fact that culture is tested and can thrive in very challenging times, right? It's easy to be a good team player or a good leader when things are going perfectly. So in 2020 and 2021, where you were based out of Australia, what was the effect on team morale and how did you guys respond? Can you give us some examples of what you changed or did differently?
obviously in really unique circumstances. We were locked in a bubble in Australia. It was all about communication in some way, shape or form. It was all about just supporting and sticking as loyal as possible. We were blessed. We had amazing owners in Mark Robinson and Ortex Group, and their number one priority was people looking after everyone. I think the biggest thing for us was when we returned back to New Zealand, and I'll just briefly touch on what we decided to do, and I reckon it's the difference between having a lot of staff remain at the Warriors and losing a lot of staff. And that was, we had the opportunity and we wanted to reset our organisation, and Buffett and I talked about how we're going to do that, and we had a number of different ideas, but as this will sound a bit funny, but we wanted to go through a bit of a cleansing exercise. Mm-hmm. We wanted to show our staff and our players that we understood over the last 2 or 3 years you went through a hell of a time. Put aside your employment component and look at the person as a person. So I went off on a journey and found a sports psych and sat down with him and explained this unique outcome we were trying to achieve out of this. And he had no program or no experience on how we could do that. So he went away and thought about it and wrote down a bit of a plan, and we were happy with that. We sat in this exact room. Every staff member, every player at the One New Zealand Warriors sat here, and we went through the whole experience. We got the dirty water off our chest, so to speak. We asked people to get up, criticise the club, criticise Cameron, criticise the owners, criticise whoever you want, but we are not going back downstairs into our office or into the change rooms until that was done. Cut a long story short, we had an amazing few hours doing it, and what we worked out as a club was we got a lot of positive out of it. It was quite surprising, and everyone was like shocked. There was 2 columns of what we got out of it that was great and what we got out of it that was negative, and it far outweighed the negative, and that inspired a lot of people. And that sports psych himself came to me and said, I'm surprised a lot of businesses don't do this to reset and show the employee that they are a person that's had a tough time, you care about them, and sure as hell that to me was the best part of what's happened over the last 3 years. No matter how bad it was, that day was a changing of the guard here and the mindset.
That's pretty powerful. Thank you for sharing. And Webby, it's thinking about transitions, being good at the job doesn't always mean that you'll be good at teaching or coaching others how to be good at their job. So how did you manage this transition from player to coach yourself? And for others in the room who might be functional experts who are hanging up the boots to now be leading their own teams or doing their own coaching work, is there any advice that you'd share?
First of all, I've got to set the record straight. Before you mentioned that I had a successful playing career, I was terrible, just so we know that. I'll race anyone here after this, and I'm sure you'll beat me. That's how fast I was. The playing to coaching happened to me a long time ago. Well, I actually started as a player coach when I was 23 years old, where I was playing with the team and I was coaching. So straight away, I had to distance myself, like you spoke about before, and realise, not distance myself from the group, but start realising they're looking at me instead of being the class clown. I couldn't do that anymore. I could do it at the right time, but I had to be careful of when I did that. So that was an amazing experience. I was 23, I was captain coach of the Connecticut Wildcats. I think we used to average a crowd of about 25 people. It was 9 rounds, but it meant the world to me. It actually meant just as much to what it is coaching in the NRL now. Just so important. We won 9 games in a row and got beaten in the grand final. I was devastated. But the learning curve for me about integrating with the staff and how do I get the best out of them, I'm going to give myself a rap because I just bagged myself about how slow I was, so I'm just going to give myself a rap. I'm actually pretty good at explaining rugby league. I think that's one of my strengths, how to actually explain what we're trying to get out of it and make them see it and understand it and then go, wow, I understand, I'm going to jump into that. Instead, if there's no clarity or if there's confusion, then people just don't want to do it. They're timid. They're actually, I'm not committing yet because I don't understand what you're on about here, mate. And then secondly, my big mindset was I'd worked with some of our staff, but thankfully I got to put together a staff that I believed in. And then, like Cameron said, I felt like they were experts in the areas. But the biggest thing I didn't hire them just to do, we went really different to every other NRL club. I just found them roles within our training and coaching that I knew they were exceptional at. So I didn't go generic and say, you're in charge of attack, you're in charge of defence. I went, no, you're really good with forwards, you do that. You're unbelievable backs. Stacey Jones, you're really good at kicking, really good at the transitions of the game. That's what you're doing. So I changed the whole way we looked at it and just didn't go generic what every other NRL club is. I wanted just to find good people that were talented and then understand what they were so good at as coaches, that they were experts in that area. Then let's not complicate it. That's what you will be in charge of. And then for me, is I had a vision. I had an idea of how I wanted to play. I wanted an idea how I wanted them, the boys, to do it each week. So then I wanted to try and get that out of the coaches. So we took some time, like I mentioned. We went away for 3 days and asked them a million different questions about how they saw the game. And to drag that information, put it on a piece of paper, and leave that day with us 4 coaches with complete clarity. So then we left, and then the next thing is I wanted to jump on the grass and show them what I was good at. You know, what I wanted to lead from the front, the side, and the rear. So for me, that was my style. But I wanted to empower them, and I knew because I'd asked so many questions and dragged it out of them, I knew if I gave them responsibility and empowered them, then they would do so much more work. They worked way harder than I've seen any coaches, and it wasn't me asking them to, they just naturally did it because they felt like they were the ones delivering it. So that's the only time you'll hear me give myself a compliment.
Thank you for doing it with us.
Maybe later on.
And Jason, we know that having the right raw material, so we've spoken about talent, we've spoken about attitude, about being a good person, doesn't mean someone will be able to immediately deliver, right? Whether it's because they're earlier in their career or they've transitioned into a new role. So how do you balance that tension between supporting someone who does have potential versus meeting the immediate needs of the team or of the business for those outcomes?
Well, yeah, that's the role of a leader, right, is balancing performing today and making sure you're set up to perform in the future. And if you ignore it, you're not going to have any sort of sustainable success. You know, it is hard to win in the moment, but it's easier than trying to win over the long term. You can assemble the right crew of people for one event, one business project, one season, but nurturing your young talent. Everyone's going to retire one day, and all those players that we're looking at that we wish would just extend for another 10 years that we know won't, we need to make sure that you know, there are players coming up who will replace them, and it's the same in an organisation. So when you identify talent and you know that they could be the future whomever, you have to start nurturing that. That's investment in training and development and support, and that will get you loyalty too. Those employees, workers, or players who go, they backed me when I was young and green and not that good, but they saw something in me, and now here I am, you know. And it's absolutely critical to your talent strategy to identify that and to balance the day-to-day performance with the growth ongoing. And no one's perfect, right? Even if you're the best player, there's still areas to develop, or the best at your job. So you've always got to work on improvement all the time.
And Andrew, kind of last of our organised questions for today. Culture, of course, as we've heard today, is the key part of succeeding, whether you're in an organisation or in a sports club. As you've moved from clubs, how do you translate the strengths of one club or the learnings from that club to another without, you know, kind of imposing it on the place you are now?
Yeah. Well, copy and paste doesn't work. That, like I can promise, I worked at the Penrith Panthers for 2 years, and then I actually came there, honestly, if I'm being honest, at a really good time when they won 17 in a row the year before and got beaten in the grand final. So I was joining the club at a pretty good time. And there were so many things at my previous club that I didn't like, but there's so many things I loved. So I was thinking, when I go to Penrith, I'm so excited, can't wait to learn off these guys. And I can't begin to tell you how many things they just confirmed for me that were right about that's what a culture looks like. And then I might have learned 1 or 2 things that were just gold, like that had a really big impact on my life. And then someone told me a long time ago, because I did it, I tried to copy and paste from a club I was at years ago to another club I went and coached. I tried to copy and paste something tactically. So let's talk tactically and then we'll talk culturally. And it just blew up in my face. I just got it so wrong. I was asking people
to do something that they weren't good at. Like you mentioned before, what are you actually good at? And I was asking them to do something that wasn't their strengths, and I got it completely wrong, but it was the way I wanted to do it and the way I wanted to play, and it just went terribly. So I learnt that, and then someone had always said, you can't copy and paste what exactly happens here at the Panthers and then just decide to take it to the Warriors. So I remember we spoke about getting a sports psych in and stuff like that, one of our first meetings. I said, I just can't commit to any of that, and Cameron agreed, until I actually got to work with the club. So you've got to get in there and see what the strengths of the culture are and what things aren't working about the culture. And can I just say, it's never as bad as people probably think. It's probably you're only as good as your weakest link. So if you either put time into that weak link and get them better, or you just, like I said, you just get rid of them, which sounds very harsh. Is that a HR thing?
No, that's all right, mate. Yeah,
Is that all right?
You just
get rid of them?
You can do that.
By the way,
it's not been recorded.
By the way, I honestly do, always believe in giving everyone a chance and helping them and educate them and get them to where they need to be. But if they're just not rowing in the same direction, they've got to leave.
That's the HR answer, mate.
Okay, there we go.
That's what we wanted.
I'll get a job when I retire. I think that's the biggest thing about is you learn something at one place, you'll learn that some of those things you learn, you can take to any organisation that you work at. They'll just copy and paste it, it'll definitely work. But there's some stuff you can't. You've got to know what people's strengths, weaknesses are, what they actually need right now at this place. Because I tell you, there's things in the next pre-season that we need to add to our game and to our culture. But all we've done is focused on the most important things. Let's just be so good at that. And then if we're really good at that, we can add layers to it. So I think that's important. You've got to assess where you're going to. Only copy the things you know work in every organisation and work out what that place needs right now.
Thank you. And so to wrap up the facilitated part of our discussion before we jump into Q&A, let's end on a practical note. So there's been an abundance of very powerful storytelling today and of sharing experiences, which I thank you for. What I'd like us to end on is for you to give us your top 2 pieces of advice for building a high-performing culture in an organisation. And Cameron, we'll start with you.
People and honesty.
Yeah, nice. And Jason?
Define your values and then don't let up. Focus on it all the time. Don't ignore your culture. It's a thing.
Nice. And Andrew, you've got about 10 words based on your panellists.
Yeah, I just don't want to copy and paste. Like you said, I said don't copy and paste. If I'm going to copy, so honestly, if you get good people, they want to work hard and you create a fun culture. Yeah. It's impossible to lose.
Nice. Thank you. Can I please get a MyHR pair of hands to help dish out the balls on the side that have been signed by the One New Zealand Warriors to our questions? So we'll open it up to you all. First 5 questions get a signed rugby ball, signed league ball over here. And I'm going to close my eyes, and when you've got your hands up, I'll open them again and pick from random. 3, 2, 1. Cool. And a grey shirt just in there. So breeding accountability over time from the start of the season towards the end.
Yeah, is that for me? Yep. First accountability session we had, the lights are on, we had the vision playing, and we were showing something. We'd been really positive. Remember, I was trying to build their confidence up, tell them how good they were, and along the way, don't worry, there was always accountability. But this day wasn't so good at training, and there was a lot more, let's call it errors, or things that didn't align with the way we wanted to play, and they were more effort things. There was lack of trying. There was lack of competing. And we pointed them out to the players because we don't ever walk past things. And we pointed it out in a really respectful way, but it was honest feedback. And I could see it was actually one of our other coaches presenting, I could see the players sliding down in their chairs and hiding. We're like a theatre room. And they were trying to hide behind the guy in front of them. And they were getting really embarrassed and upset about it. And I stopped the session halfway through and said, can you turn the lights on? I said, do we not trust each other enough and care enough about each other that we can't own when we get feedback from someone who's standing up in the room that cares about you, that actually wants you to do better and wants to give you every opportunity to succeed? And we've got to do this collectively. We've got to do this together. So there's one-on-one meetings about accountability where you just can't do in front of the group. But boys, today's one of those days we need to do this together. We need to go through this process because there was too many times at training yesterday that this happened. It wasn't in isolation. So today, I just watch you slide in your chairs. Why don't we all sit upright? This sounds real corny. They had to sit upright. I said, why don't you be proud? Okay, and then when you watch the next minute, because there's a minute to go, when you watch it, afterwards I'm going to ask you why you did it and how you felt. And then I'm going to ask you to say it in a real confident, proud way in front of your mates because I feel like we've built trust and respect for each other. And then that was the changing moment for us. So the accountability, because I've always worked at clubs and they said, you've got to be able to tell each other you're no good when you're not. And it's all great. And then I've seen clubs just adopt it and they start yelling and swearing at each other that day. And then they leave that day hating each other. So that time, over time, they got so good at it that now they can sit in a team meeting and they can say, any ideas what he should have done here? And they'd say, I reckon Charlie should have done X, Y, and Z. Charlie, if you do that next time, mate, that's going to help our team so much. And Charlie goes, yeah, cheers, mate, I agree with you. And that doesn't, trust me, you can't do that overnight. It takes a long time. And trust me, we've got to go on another journey next year and get even better at it. But it comes back to feeling safe and trust around each other and giving feedback in a way that they feel like you're still on their side. You're not against them. Yeah.
Thank you. Cool. Next question. We'll go from the side of the room. There's a guy in a cap at the back in a dark jersey. Yeah. If you shout, I'll repeat it so we can all hear. So just in terms of adopting a coaching style that works for the players, not that works for the coach necessarily, and how would you describe your coaching style now?
Yeah, our style, I think it's more, you're talking about the flamboyance on the field. So to win in the NRL, you've got to be reliable. So if you look back when Endo coached the team, you look at Ali Lauatiti, how flamboyant they were, it was just unbelievable. If you look at that team, that was their strengths. So what we assessed, like I said at the start, what wins in the NRL, no matter where you are, and then what are these guys good at? And we wanted our game, we thought if we're really reliable, meaning under pressure we can perform and our game holds up. And we spoke about it, we've got this paragraph on my thing, we put it into a paragraph, but I'll summarise it. Basically, our style, we wanted to be a resilient team that could absorb pressure and then apply it. In attack, we wanted to, after we absorbed that pressure, be able to pounce on the opposition. If we saw an opportunity, we wanted to take it. Okay? We wanted a team that was proud in their jersey and had a hatred for losing. And there was more to it than that. I could tell you that. But that was the summary. So then we went and looked at all the words that needed to be there and we just coached the hell out of those. And back to my point is we realised the big summary of that was you had to be reliable. So I feel like our attack is exceptional at the moment, and you watch Dallin score in the corner and he jumps in the air and the hair's flying everywhere and everyone's going crazy. He needs a shampoo contract. But if you look at that style and play, everyone thinks that's flamboyant, but we've changed parts about that style that looks flamboyant and looks really cool, that it's reliable. It's not a flick pass. We don't ever pass the ball where we can't see it's going. We catch it in two hands and pass the ball on. There might be a rare occasion. And we're all moving and swinging around the outside of the opposition together. And it's reliable. As one person being unpredictable and flicking a pass, that's not our strength. We are the lowest offloads in the NRL. I said to the boys, you have a license to offload as much as you like, as long as it's safe and reliable. And you can get it to your mate. So when everyone says, oh, do you tell them you can't offload? That's the worst thing in the world. But I don't do that at all. But we don't have offloaders in our team. We've got Adam, who's probably the only one good at it. So let's just stick to our strengths. Let's be reliable and let's strike when we see the moment. I'd say that's how, and be resilient.
Thank you. Cool. Next question. We'll go from someone in the middle, perhaps. Oh, no one in the middle. We'll go on the side again. Cool. We've got a fellow in a jacket and a tie on the right by T.
Over the last 5 years, who would you name as the best recruit, and what was his key attribute that made you pick that person?
So, best recruit over the last 5 years and key attributes that mean you're picking this player.
I think Cameron's going to have to answer that one because he's been here for 5 years. And he loves his recruitment.
Well, I've got a few, mate. Look, I think on and off the field, Tohu Harris, I think he just epitomises what we're all about, and a lot of the stuff Webby's driving, which is, just the hard work in the background. Like, I think he plays his 100th game for the club this weekend, which is a real privilege for our footy club because he came to this club from Melbourne Storm. He was just after a grand final. He was one of the best, players in their team, and if not in the game. So he really led the charge for him and Rog to come back. But he's stayed the course, and he's driven so much, but he's held the club together through a tough time. He deserves every bit of success he gets this year. I think Marcelo Montoya said this morning, which is absolutely true about him. I don't think we've ever seen a player at NRL level hate training as much as him, hate the gym as much as him, and hates being here as much as him. But as soon as he crosses that line, he becomes a footballer that everyone else aspires to be, and a leader. He's not a big mouth leader, but you watch him, the amount of work he does is unbelievable, and you need a soldier like that when it's wartime, he does not give up. So without a doubt, for me, he's been the best for a number of those reasons.
I just told everyone about enjoyment, and you said he hates coming here every day.
Well, he does, and we all know that. That's not because he's actually found a personality. Because a coach Lasso here, as those that he's actually quite a funny human, but he's just the most non-footballing person. Did you watch that game last night, Tohu? No. Who? Like the team we're playing next week? Nah. Didn't. Don't watch any football. But he just seriously. But he's such a special human being, and honestly, the best signing we've had in years.
We'll go away, and we're in, say, Gold Coast, beautiful weather. All the players are walking down the beach to get a coffee. What'd you do today, Tohu? Sat in my room. Like, he's not scared to be himself, Tohu, but at the right time, he will just put the whole team on his shoulders and say, this is where we're going. And he leads from in front, definitely, to back up Cameron.
Thank you. Cool. Next question. We'll swing left again. I've got some centre people. Yeah, and the puffer jacket on the front. Yeah. Yeah, and the yellow on the front table. Yeah.
This is for Webby. Webby, I just wanted to know, how has the culture changed back in 2015? How would you compare that to now, to when you came back?
Same amazing people. Like, we had great people here last time. I have to bring it back to the ambition of the front office, and I mean that. Like, I'm not going to give him a rap too often, but I have to. No, I mean it, because what happens, I just felt culturally they'd turn up. They weren't fiercely competitive. I didn't feel like they wanted to turn up and try, but they didn't want to say, no, I want to be the best. And we had a terrific coach at that time in Andrew McFadden, who I felt, gave us an amazing opportunity to we nearly made it to 2 final series. We had a good team, but I felt like our weakest links at the time, if I'm being honest, really hurt us. And I feel like that's the difference. No one here wants to be the weak link right now. And I think even culturally, like, they were so proud as a group that they'd made it. Sorry, as individuals, they made it. That was it. It was like tools down, feet up, I've made it. And then you had 6 or 7 guys that were exceptional players, and the head coach that was like, no, I want to go and do this. But I didn't feel the front office were delivering the same thing. I felt it was more run like a business than a football club, if I'm being honest.
Thank you. And last question for one of the signed balls, then we'll continue taking Q&A. We've got a gentleman in a grey shirt, Nick, with the orange. Yeah, we'll get you speaking.
Obviously you know that business brings business in, so are there a lot more players
Yeah, look, for the last 3 years, our whole development pathway stalled. So before COVID hit, we had 4 teams, had an NRLW, New South Wales Cup, NRL and an under-19. So we lost the opportunity to develop kids through our systems, and that is the key to success, bringing and promoting kids through from a salary cap aspect. But what I can say to you on the back of this year and what what the team's done on the field, the excitement that the fans have brought back to the game day experience, and that message is loud and clear in Australia to every Kiwi over there that left years ago. You want to get home and play for these guys because they're going to the never land. You know, they've been led there with great people like Webby and Torhu and the like. So we are getting phone call after phone call from agents, particularly in Australia, wanting to bring home kids because the opportunity is going to exist from next year. We're going to have 6 teams in total, and from under 17s right through. We've never had that before in the history of the club, and that's through a commitment and a passionate owner. Investing in that space through Andrew McFadden overseeing it. This is truly the most exciting time this club's about to embark on. We've never had a 16-year-old kid being able to wear our colours to represent the Warriors at that level ever. So to have those kids leaving school to come here to training, go back, tell their mates, it's just going to spread. And all of a sudden, the best kids in New Zealand will want to stay and be coached, here in New Zealand and be successful. So it is having a huge effect on us. And the next 3 to 5 years, I think you'll just see a huge amount of talent come through the NRL system like never before.
Can I go rogue? I'll let that gentleman ask his question there. He started. He was
blowing up. He was blowing up deluxe.
I just want you to leave happy.
He was going to make official.
We're about enjoyment here. We're about.
I was actually going to give him the ball because he's the die-hard Warriors fan, but I lost out on that one.
Okay.
I'll get you one.
Thanks. That'd be awesome. You've talked a lot about culture and leadership, but as building that culture and as leaders, how do you allow your players, your staff, to give you feedback on what's not working so that you can move that culture? Because presumably that culture is moving, that moves as the season goes by, as the years go by, as leading a team. How do you allow that to happen?
Yeah, you've got to ask a lot of questions. So I ask them how they feel things are going, what do they think the team needs, and when they come up with a great idea, I make sure the team knows that it's their idea. Unless it's like the best play ever, then I'll take credit for that one. But I'll give you an example like Sean Johnson, for example. He's running the team, and if he's got a better idea and when he likes something or feels something out there, he's doing it. I want him to tell me, and I want to create an environment where I ask them lots and lots of questions, where they tell me how they're feeling, they tell me their ideas. I'm not shutting them down, listening, and I've got to take the best ones. Like I can't. That's my judgment now as the boss to say, you know what, I don't think that one's going to work right now, but we'll probably use it later. I think that idea you come up will definitely work this week, so let's use it. And then straight away, they get excited, they feel empowered, and then they start teaching me things. It's trying to create an environment. We spoke about empowerment before, but as a leader, whereas if I actually ask them what they're thinking, I'll learn so much more about them individually. So the big thing I've learned, I've spoken about this recently, I closed my door for a week because I was really struggling to get work done. I felt like everyone was coming past. And that was my worst week of coaching I've ever done in my life. And put my door open, and the amount of conversations I went back to having with individuals, I felt like I'm never ever going to do that again. So ask questions, listen, and if someone comes up with a better idea than you, make sure you use it and make sure you credit them for it. Because you've got to show vulnerability. Not everything's about me. So
just on that, another change that was made at the start of the year. Not everyone knows our layout of the operations downstairs, but a lot of players would park down in the back there when there was no marquees and stuff. You walk in the tunnel, into the change rooms, or into the gym, into the change rooms, do your work for the day, and basically walk out the same way. The coaches sit up on level 1, just here below us, and the guys, Webby made a policy that every player had to come through reception to engage with the club, walk past the coach's office, hi to everyone, and then go down into the gym. And at the end of the day, you had to leave that way as well. So no matter how bad of a day, or if you got a spray off Webby or whoever, those guys had to leave the place saying goodbye to the staff and engage on the way out. And that really bridged the gap to what you're talking about around asking a lot of questions and having those players, because they'll sit there now and there's an area where they just lounge around. You've got to kick them out, because they feel so homely and comfortable in the situation now, which is another change, but a simple change that just improved that whole culture that's been driven down there.
On my first day, we had an 8 o'clock meeting. Our head of performance came to get me at 7:55, and he says, "We're about to start at 8." I said, "No, we're not. Everyone's late." He goes, "Mate, everyone's downstairs." I didn't even know they were in the building. And just on with our culture and being safe and people being happy. If a guy walks past you in the morning at 7:30 and he's got his past your window, past your door, and he's got his hoodie on, he's got his head down, he's had a bad night's sleep or something's not going good in his life, okay? And then you go, "Hey, can I see you, mate?" He comes in and I go, "How you going?" Start engaging in a question. So if I don't see him all day, I only see him when we go out in the field, it's too late. He trains poorly. I don't know why he's trained poorly. And then I start getting frustrated. "What are you doing?" And then he leaves and he goes out the side door, he goes home. His day's got worse. Started crap to begin with, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And now he leaves thinking, the coach hates me when I don't. And then that rule, honestly, I'll learn it on the run. If you can create your facility that there is foot traffic going through the right parts of your offices to where they need to be, your team, the ones you deal with and need to know how they're going and how they feel, and you understand the temperature of the room, I'm going to say it's probably the biggest impact that I've been a part of, for me personally, my coaching.
I'm really glad you got to ask that question. Thank you. That was some fantastic content from our panellists. We'll take 2 or 3 more questions and then we will wrap up just to give you guys time to get back into your days. So we'll start down the far end. Has anyone got a hand raised at the back? Jumping in. Gentleman in the striped shirt. Oh, check. Sorry. Just to repeat for the people in the back. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
so dealing with people who aren't rowing in the same direction and having a conversation, like Jason said, that doesn't need to be disciplinary, but the perception being that it might be, and being worried about being one word away from a personal grievance claim.
Yeah, it's a good question. You deal with it every day, right? And the whole idea around a disciplinary is it's a formal process. It has structure in law. There are things you can and cannot do. For us as HR professionals or employment law people, when it gets to that, you're so much better off if you've done all the pre-work. And often if you've done the pre-work, you don't need to go into a formal process. And this fear that's been perpetuated around a PG, we're always one step away from a PG, it doesn't flow through in reality. And I don't know if this is a stat we should be talking about or not, but we run around 60 disciplinaries a week. And in terms of when you follow the process that we prescribe, we've never had a successful PG. We have PGs, but then it's when we help our clients navigate in a way that we go, we know there's risk, but it's far better that this person's no longer in our organisation. So we're prepared to wear that risk to put some money on the table and sort of resolve this thing. But in the context of your question and this idea around, these culture killers, it's somewhat subjective, right? It's your behaviour. It's not that you were asked to build this thing or achieve this sales target and you failed to do that. You've hit those targets, it's how you've behaved along the way. And that's why conversation is important. And I think we're way too risk averse in New Zealand around having those conversations. You come to Australia for a bit and watch how managers talk to their staff there. And it's a highly unionised environment. People know their rights there as well, but there's just this willingness to front and go, mate, this is out of order, and talk like a human. If you can get it, I would say do it without involving HR people. Because you can talk like a human to another human, a boss to an employee, and if you need some help, always start with a compliment. Go, mate, you're great at your job, but this behaviour, the way you spoke to our receptionist when you come in today is completely out of order. And if someone talked to your son or your daughter like that, you'd be on them straight away. And we don't accept that stuff here. There's no grounds for a personal grievance if you have a conversation like that. If you have 3 conversations like that, and then you want to involve an HR person around a disciplinary, you're on a really solid ground. So I think reduce the fear around personal grievance, take a bit of control back, don't be a dick, treat your people well, but in return they should treat you well and they should treat their colleagues well. So there's absolutely a way through there, yeah. Cool. Thanks for asking me a question. It's the celebrities here they want to hear from. Yeah.
We've got some, are you pointing it? At the back, with the glasses at the back.
Question for Cameron. Just in terms of managing external stakeholders and the impact that has on your culture, obviously you've got press around the stadium choice coming up. Just how are you managing them and thinking about the impact of that has on your culture?
Are you from Eden Park? No? You're right. That's sort of, I just want to make sure. Look, there's only so much you can control. The media will just say what they want to say, to be honest. Like, you really can't control that narrative that's out there. But if you're asking me how we control, those stakeholders, we just got to be true to ourselves. We've got to represent what our values are and our behaviours are, and we take that extremely seriously, me and Webby and everyone else in the organisation, and we do our job the best we can. We then hope that they start to really support us through, great storylines and so on. In terms of, debates that are out there and all that sort of thing, if you're asking me about that particular topic, we've made it extremely clear that Mount Smart is our spiritual home. It's our home. This is where we train. This is where we sweat. This is where the blood and tears are on the field and off the field. And we're trying to make sure that the NRL understand that we've earned the right to be here to play at this ground. Now, if they wish on commercial grounds to take us elsewhere, well, they can challenge that and do so. But it is not easy to control all of that out there, but what we can control is everything we've talked about today and being the best version of the One New Zealand Warriors we possibly can be.
Thank you. And lucky last question, are we going to raise hands anywhere? Gentleman here in the dark shirt. Yeah.
I've just spent the last 2 years working on the Women's Cricket World Cup and the Women's Football World Cup. And it's quite easy, not easy, but we become singularly laser focused on a single event or a group of matches in a single event. So your focus is quite narrow. I'm just interested perhaps from Cameron or Jason or maybe Andrew, how do you balance that with what Jason, you were talking about earlier in terms of looking at bringing things through from the past, looking at the present, and also looking at the future? So is it like a third, or how do you kind of broaden your scope so you're not only laser focused on the now?
You go.
Great.
You start, I'll come in.
So I think, like, when I look across our organisation, that's sort of my role, to take that helicopter view and allow the guys to drive into the now and with key strategies. And we use our reset of our club this year is a really good example. We had 10 home games. Our whole philosophy this year was reconnect the One New Zealand Warriors with every fan we could in New Zealand. If not, you weren't a fan, we're going to attract you to be a fan. And you've only got to look at the way that's happened, and full credit to the staff that have planned and executed amazing experiences here. And while we're doing that, at the same time, there's a couple of us working in the background about next year, the year after, around that process. But also in behind that, there's other layers such as recruitment, development. We've got to celebrate the now, as Webby touched on before, but we've got to set up our future, because the now will go pretty quick to the past. And, it's a moving target for us, because we've got players, sponsors, fans, all wanting to win now, but at the same time, we've got to be ready for tomorrow as well. So it's about teamwork. And I mean about him coaching the now, about Cappy recruiting for the future, about Glenn Critchley organising the partners for the now and tying them up for the future, and about our game day being right in the zone to just absolutely light this place up tomorrow night. And for those that are coming, those that aren't coming, losers, but those that are coming, mate, it's going to be a hell of an experience. So it's a moving target that so many people have a job to do.
Yeah, and look, mate, that's strategy, right? So you're singularly focused on, say, the Women's World Cup. FIFA are focused on the next 3. And if they're doing their job, they're talking to you about what went well in this particular event and how they can replicate that, what didn't work, how we've grown a Southern Hemisphere audience for that sport that they previously didn't. I know they were sceptical about the size of crowds and the coverage and the time zone issues, and I think New Zealand and Australia have blown them out of the water with that. So it's that strategy piece. What is the 3, 5 or 10-year plan? And even though there might be projects within that are focused on a single event, like you were with those events, or whether it's the ICC or FIFA, there is a layer that is looking beyond that. And whether it's a successful club or a business, it's not about our performance in this financial year, it's what we're looking at for the next financial year, what I need to do to prepare for Canada, and whether it's Singapore or the UK next, and why, whilst not taking my eye off the ball here and in Australia, which are our growth engines, which is where we make all our money. So, and that's strategy. That's 100% about strategising and being clear on where you're going.
Fantastic. Well, that brings us to the end of our panel discussion on building a high-performance culture today. Thank you to the Warriors again for hosting, and thank you so much to all of you for spending some of your day with us today. Coffee and snacks will have all been cleared away, so I won't say that next sentence. I'm glad I checked. But please wrap up by joining me in giving our panellists a massive round of applause and thanking them for their time.